Good morning.
Hey, you didn't read my text, but I got my answer.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, I just now saw it. Sorry about that. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I'm sorry.
I said you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Well, how's school going?
I got one more semester
All right,
and
man.
I'll be done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 3 more weeks than this one.
Well, congratulations on being at the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's getting bleak though. But I'm here.
It'll be good to have the parchment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was healing up. My back was healing up until last night when I lifted a box and instead of the right side being injured, now I've injured the left side. So now I'm sitting here on a heating pad trying to.
Some people call that equity, but okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. At least I'm trying to maintain balance, you know.
Yeah,
It's good to be balanced. Well, so I tell you what we'll do is
I got Facebook.
okay. Since it's you and me, we will
Just alternate.
we will go quickly, and if we don't have a lot of discussion, we'll end early. So that's
That
fine.
works.
Okay. Well, I tell you what. How about
I'll
you
be
can
liturgist.
you can be liturgist and I'll be voice of the people.
That
So,
works.
all right, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up. Um, whoops, hang on. I can't quite see. All right, there we go. Whenever
All
you're
right.
ready.
Okay, good morning. Today marks the birthday in 1928 of Hans Kung, a German Roman Catholic theologian who nonetheless was a vocal critic of the Roman Catholic Church. He was very active in ecumenical conversations across denominations and religions. March 19th to 20th is also the feast day of Saint Joseph, and in Spain it is celebrated as Father's Day, since Joseph of Nazareth was the model of fatherhood.
I'm not sure why I had that in there under April 6th. For some reason I pulled the wrong. It's
You
okay.
know what? It was still good information.
Oh,
Greetings. The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Hear these words of invitation.
The hospitality of God knows no bounds.
The love of God is immeasurable.
The generosity of God is beyond our wildest dreams.
We gather today as invited ones,
As beloved ones,
as blessed ones.
draw near and let us break the bread of life.
All right, today our responsive reading comes from Psalms 126, and we'll be reading from the Common English Version. When the Lord changed Zion's circumstances for the better, it was like we had been dreaming.
Our mouths were suddenly filled with laughter. Our tongues were filled with joyful shouts.
It was even said at that time among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them.
Yes, the Lord has done great things for us, and we are overjoyed.
Lord, change our circumstances for the better, like dry streams in the desert waste.
Let those who plant with tears reap the harvest with joyful shouts.
Let those who go out crying and carrying their seed.
Come home with joyful shouts, carrying bales of grain.
You want to do the old one? Or you want to
Oh,
just keep alternating?
I guess yeah. Why don't you do the I'll do this one. You do the gospel reading, okay?
Awesome.
The Lord says, "Who makes a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters, who brings out chariot and horse, army and battalion. They will lie down together and will not rise. They will be extinguished, extinguished like a wick. Don't remember the prior things. Don't ponder ancient history. Look, I'm doing a new thing. Now it sprouts up. Don't you recognize it? I'm making a way in the desert, paths in the wilderness. The beasts of the field, the jackals and the ostriches will honor me, because I have put water in the desert and streams in the wilderness to give water to my people, my chosen ones, this people whom I formed for myself, who will recount my praise."
Our gospel reading is taken from Luke chapter 13, verses 1 through 9. 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, home of Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Lazarus and his sisters hosted a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who joined him at the table. Then Mary took an extraordinary amount, almost 3/4 of a pound, of a very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She anointed Jesus' feet with it, then wiped his feet dry with her hair. The house was filled with the aroma of perfume. Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, complained, "This perfume was worth a year's wages. Why wasn't it sold and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He carried the money bag and would take it, and would take what was in it. Then Jesus said, "Leave her alone. The perfume was to be used for preparation for my burial, and this is how she has used it. You always will have the poor among you. You won't always have me." May God bless the hearing of his word.
Thanks be to God.
Hans Kang wrote, if you cannot see that divinity includes male and female characteristics in the same, let me start over.
That's fine.
I need no more glasses. You cannot see that divinity includes male and female characteristics and at the same time transcends them, you have bad consequences. Rome and Cardinal O'Connor based the exclusion of women priests on the idea that God is the Father and Jesus is his son. They were only there were only male disciples. They are defending patriarchal church with the patriarchal God. We must fight the patriarchal misunderstanding of God. And no peace among nations without peace among religion. No peace among religions without dialogue between religions. No dialogue between religions without investigation of the foundings of the religions. Amen.
I know, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
good
pretty
stuff.
deep.
He was pretty amazing. Well, we'll go to God in prayer. Thank you to those of you who are joining us, and if you're on Facebook or YouTube, if you want to join in prayer with us today, you're welcome to. If you want to put a prayer request in the comments, then we will incorporate that into our prayer. And if you said you got Facebook open,
I got Facebook and I got the chat. We're good.
okay, and I'll look at YouTube. So
Great.
let's go to God in prayer. Gracious God, who transcends all our ideas of human being, we give you thanks that even though you are so far beyond us, we reflect part of your image. And you tell us that every person, every human being is created in your image, regardless of race or gender or nationality or wealth or any other means we use to distinguish people. You are the one who comes to us in the presence of other living things. We ask you to help open our eyes to the mystery of who you are and of who we are. And God, let that awe also move us toward greater compassion and toward greater justice on the planet. That all these systems of human division and understanding that are used to oppress others, God, may they come to an end. May you transform us with greater understanding. We lift up to you all those places where people are struggling because of fear and anxiety, or because of hatred of what they don't understand. We lift up to you our country and its political turmoil, but we're also aware that of the 8 billion people on the planet, this country only has about 300 million or so. And so we lift up to you all those places where people are making their voices heard in their own self-determination and ask that we might follow their example. God, we lift up to you those who are struggling in mind or body. We lift up to you the prayer requests that we bring before you, and I invite those of you who are listening to share. You can either put it in the comments or the chat.
For protection of the elderly, disabled, and the poor.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Caregivers.
Lord, hear our prayer.
politicians.
Lord, hear our prayer. For the planet and for climate change.
Lord, hear our prayer. In gratitude for peaceful protests.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the unhoused.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the 1,000 people who lost their jobs because of this administration.
Lord, hear our prayer. Gratitude for all the people who showed up at the protests.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For help in times of transition.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God, for the things that we name and for the things that are unnamed, we give you thanks that you hear our prayers and that you answer. And we are grateful for the prayer that Jesus taught us. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your reign come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the sovereignty, the power, and the glory now and forever. Amen. So I wanted to take a moment to this story that we heard today in the gospel reading is usually the one that gets read on the Sunday before Palm Sunday, which is so it's hard to believe Easter's in 2 weeks. So Palm Sunday to Easter is really the last week in Jesus' life takes up a big part of the gospel stories. If you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, the narrative from Jesus coming into Jerusalem on Sunday until he's crucified on Friday takes up several pages in each gospel. And this is one of those that really kind of happens either sometime in the middle of that week, so we're actually thinking a week ahead, right? Or it happens, but we usually read it on this Sunday. And it's related a little bit differently in each gospel. Something that hit me pretty square this year as I read it was something I hadn't observed before. This story gets read several different ways, usually preached several different ways. I want to go ahead and say the way that I denounce that this gets preached is when Jesus says, "The poor you always have with you," and people have used that verse out of context to claim that we don't need to do anything to eliminate poverty. And so I have to say that's the disclaimer that I have to put out there because there's so much awful preaching in the world, and that's one where Christianity gets weaponized to do exactly the opposite of what Jesus is talking about, right? I mean, Jesus, the concern for the poor is top of the line. The guy that fed 5,000 or actually really 10,000 people who couldn't pay for it is not a guy who's saying, yeah, you guys don't worry about poverty so much. I mean, the guy whose mom said, fill the hungry with good things and send the rich empty away. This is not the guy who's saying, yeah, don't worry about poverty. All right. So poverty is like taking care of the poor is huge in Christian faith. If you want to do anything, if you want to do anything remotely like following Jesus Christ. So I have to put that out there first because that has been preached and it is wrong. Um, the way that Jesus intends it, I think, in this passage, is actually a reference back to the book of Deuteronomy when the Israelites were being given the commandments. And God tells the Israelites before they go into the promised land, there should be no poor among you. If you're following my commands, there shouldn't be any poor. But this is how you should treat the poor. In other words, there should be no poor among you is really the main statement that Jesus is referring to here. He's saying, essentially, yeah, you're going to have the poor with you always because you're not doing what God said, but leave Mary alone. Okay. So that's the context in which Jesus is telling Judas to back off Mary after anointing his feet. Okay. The bit that hit me square this year, this is kind of the first time this has really hit me so square, is really the setting in John's gospel. It starts off, I want to go back and read it for you again real quick. Let me put it back up there because I want you to look at this with me. This is kind of where we do the Bible study portion. A lot of times when we read stories, we will skip over certain things, um, setting, context, that kind of stuff. So it says this way: 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, and again, just to kind of get this in your head, he's been already to this home, the home of Lazarus. And if you are, I will say, the first time I visited Jerusalem and went to the Mount of Olives where Jesus was arrested, I had this moment where our guide was telling us about the place we were standing. He said, standing here, you can look across the Kidron Valley, and if you've ever seen a photo of Jerusalem with a Dome of the Rock, which is now where the Muslim, it's not a mosque, but it's a shrine where Muhammad allegedly flew up to heaven. Okay. The Dome of the Rock is there with its golden dome. Back in Jesus' day, that would have been occupied by the temple. So you would have looked across the Kidron Valley and seen this massive temple. Okay. And where Jesus was standing is the beginning of a mountain that leads up away from Jerusalem. So it's a very picturesque view. And it also is the boundary of where the jurisdiction for the Jerusalem police, temple police ended. So in other words, it's on the county line would be a way of describing this. All right. All Jesus would have to do, if Jesus didn't want to be executed, since he knew they were looking for him, he could have just taken a hike over the mountain and he would have been in Bethany, which is about an hour's walk away. Like it would have been really simple to go back to this place of safety. So where we are right now is a place of safety. Okay. And Jesus has already been there and he's already done a miracle at the home of Lazarus. The guy, and it says here in this text, Jesus came to Bethany, home of Lazarus. And then, and this is almost funny. Like, in case you forgot, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Okay, so he's in the home of a guy who he raised from the dead. So this is kind of a big deal. All right. Last time Jesus was here, he brought someone back from the dead. Now, the guy who owns the house is sitting there with his sisters, Mary and Martha. Okay. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who joined him at the table. Okay. Then Mary took an extraordinary amount, almost 3/4 of a pound, of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She anointed Jesus's feet with it, then wiped his feet dry with her hair, and the house was filled with the aroma of the perfume. Okay, so I just to set the scene again, keeping in mind this is Jesus's place of safety. It's in Bethany. It's not that far from Jerusalem, where he's going to go die in just a little while, few days, right? He's sitting here in Bethany at the home of a guy who he raised from the dead. And his sister comes and anoints his feet. His sister, now this hadn't really hit me before. This is Lazarus's sister. She is so overwhelmed with gratitude. This is her brother is at the table eating. I cannot imagine how emotional this moment would be for somebody, right? Who had been through that roller coaster of grief and then joy and didn't even know what to. I mean, I'm not even sure how anyone would be in their right mind at that moment. And then Jesus, who raised her brother from the dead, is sitting there at the table. And in this outpouring of emotion, I mean, what wouldn't you give for your family member, right? For someone you loved, for a brother or sister, for a child or a parent, who you had experienced as dead coming back to you. What kind of gift would be enough? What kind of gratitude would be enough? There was nothing. There's nothing that could ever be enough. Like you would want to demonstrate or give or show out how much this meant to you. And so she does what I think is the natural human thing to do when you are just overcome with gratitude is to say, everything I have is you could take anything. I am so grateful. There's nothing I could ever pay that would be enough. Okay. And I'm thinking about how emotional it would be to watch this as someone who was so overwhelmed with gratitude coming to do this for Jesus. And that also throws into relief how unempathetic and unfeeling Judas's comment is to her, which is, why didn't you sell this and give the money to the poor? I mean, I can't think of a statement that misses the point more, you know? When I think about the amount of gratitude that someone has and then what you would need to feel or be thinking in order to denigrate that gift, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's just sanctimonious. Now, John takes another dig. He's the only one of the gospel authors who says, well, yeah, Judas is just a terrible human being who was embezzling. And I'm just going to say historically, I'm not sure that's the case. Um, I I think John has a lot more antipathy toward Judas than some of the other gospel writers. Um, but I think just in terms of the author, in terms of of John's world, the lack of empathy is astonishing. Now, I have to bring this up because, of course, we've heard a lot about empathy recently. As um, an Episcopal bishop just a month or so ago stood and had the guts to talk to the elected president and ask for mercy for people who were afraid. And there was such a blowback to what she said. In fact, we've heard through media and popular discussion, and the multi-billionaire Elon Musk himself has said that empathy is a weakness. We've even heard people say empathy is a sin. Um, I want to point out this story in part when it comes to Judas's perspective is about a lack of empathy. And again, I'm going to point out he's technically right. That money could be sold and given to the poor. There's a kind of a sanctimonious, moralistic lack of empathy, right? That doesn't recognize the gratitude of this person sitting at the table for her brother who she received back from the dead. I would have a hard time, you know. I would have a really hard time not being moved by that. And I think part of what the moral lesson here is that what Jesus really identifying as divine is empathy, is co-feeling, is feeling with somebody. And even when we think about, the poor, part of what motivates us to change policy or to give charitably is empathy, right? It's knowing what it's like to struggle or feeling the terror of not having enough. Like when I see that, I can feel it also. But that's really kind of the whole point of the incarnation. As Jesus is there, God among us, this is God's co-feeling with us. That God's empathy with us is so extraordinary that it moves God to put on flesh and come and walk among us, etc. right? That empathy, co-feeling is super important to God and really a guide for ethical decision making. It's not just about the greatest good for the greatest number. It's about what puts us in touch with being truly human and co-feeling. So I wanted to really lift that out because for me that's what hit me pretty square this year on my reading through it. Just the amount of gratitude. How would I feel if Jesus had given me back someone I loved more than life itself? If Jesus had given me them back from the dead, what wouldn't I do? What wouldn't I give? And if I were present in that room, what I would feel. I think it's a warning also not to let moralism and sanctimonious um, understanding of ethics get in the way of just sympathizing with the person in front of you. So that's what I got for you today. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts, reflections.
Well, I'm not gonna put anything past the man who would sell out his friend for a few pieces of silver. So I think he
Well,
was skimming off the top.
okay, all right. Okay.
It goes with the get up, you know. But that also makes me think about, even modern day church leaders who pretend that they're doing this for the community or doing this for the body of God. All they're doing is enriching themselves.
Hmm.
And it's a fake empathy. Like I think what Jesus was doing then was being fake with this empathy. Like, oh, we could have gave this to the poor, and
Mm-hmm.
really don't really care about that. It's like when you hear people talking about, well, we want to make this country better for everyone. Well, no, you don't. You just want to make it better for you and your friends, and
Mm-hmm.
not everyone. So, like, that's the first thing that I thought when I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, again, like you said, gratitude. I think one thing that's missing right now in our culture is gratitude. I am thankful for everything that anyone has ever done for me, and most of it I did not deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And what I don't understand is when you have people who literally go out of their way to help people, and they can't do a simple thing like even just being honest with them about what their situation is. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going through that personally with
Mm-hmm.
with a person that I know, literally bent over backwards for them, help them get on their feet, and I found out that you don't even care for real. Like I'm telling you, you got to do this and this and this, but then you get what you want, then you do what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got to cut people off.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's one of those things where people can fake empathy sometimes, but like the gratitude part, like just being
Mm-hmm.
grateful for the things that we have. And people just don't. I don't see a lot of. I don't see a lot of that right now anywhere. Anyway,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think I appreciate you because I think gratitude is a big portion of this story, and um what you said too is this realization that the only reason I'm here is because I received something as a gift. And I think a lot of the rhetoric about being self-made or deserving stuff um, is a way of trying to get beyond gratitude, or it's sort of self-congratulatory instead of saying like the only reason I'm here is because I had parents who invested in me. I had coaches and community leaders and people who encouraged me, and that's the only reason I am you know
I think I think I told this story before, but like when I was in my mid 20s, I worked at the Galleria and I lived in North Birmingham. Did not have a car.
hmm
I never missed work because I could not find a ride.
hmm
There was always someone willing to take me. They never charged me. It could be friends, it could be certain family members. And I remember one day, one of my best friends, I had asked her if she could take me to work. I had to be there around 5 o'clock. And she goes, I would, but I gotta go to Bible study. And so when she gets to Bible study, the teacher was talking about giving and how important it is to show up.
Mm.
And so she was like, yeah, because I was trying to show up for this Bible study, and my friend called me and said he needed a way to work, but I told him I can't take it because I had to come to Bible study. And the teacher told him, you missed church trying to get here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You literally missed church trying to get
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
And
Yes.
people don't understand that,
Right.
And again, like
Mm.
I said, I never was late, never missed a day of
Mm.
work because I can't get there.
Mm.
But but you have to be grateful for that. I'm gonna go to some of the comments.
Yes.
Camille says Jesus sounds like a magabot who tries to put down empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it hits it just really hit me this year as I read this. That's just it's the lack of empathy thing that's going. Yeah.
Right. I think Teresa made a edit to hers. Let me see.
Mm.
If you hear it says more about you than Jesus, you hear sure poverty is pervasive, but right now I'm focused on his things. Wait a minute. I'm focused on his things are closing in. I'm messing this up.
That's what.
It says more about you than Jesus.
Yeah.
You hear sure poverty is pervasive, but right now I'm focused on his
This
things are
time.
closing in on me.
Mhm.
And she, but hold on. Did we get another one? Oh, it moved out of the way. Could you do that
Yeah.
one for me, Dave?
Yeah. So the way that I'm reading that is that she's saying that it really says more about Judas or whoever's saying that. If what you're hearing is, sure, poverty is a pervasive issue, but right now I'm focused on, things are closing in on me, Jesus. She's showing me love in a stressful time. And if what you get out of this is screw the poor, then you're missing it entirely. I mean, like in terms of the way it gets preached, I think
Yeah,
by,
yeah.
you know,
When you said that, I started laughing because another one of my friends went to this church in Atlanta, and one day, me and my friend who I was just talking about, were talking to her about doing some type of charity work, and she goes, "My pastor said Jesus said the poor you'll have with you always. You'll go broke trying to save all of them." And we were like, "What? What?
yeah,
What?"
right. Well, I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like, you know, I don't want to get too academic here, but in ethics, we talk about at least three kinds of ethics. There's virtue ethics, which is about your character. What kind of person do I want to be? There's outcome-based ethics, which is the greatest good for the greatest number, right? And then there's normative or there's deontological ethics, which is about, following the rules. There's good axioms or rules, like do to others as you would have them do to you. That's a rule, right? And all three of these, we operate all three of these. And
Yeah,
I think sometimes, from Judas's perspective, he's operating from that greatest good for the greatest number. Hey, this is a waste. You should be doing other things. But from virtue ethics, or even I would think from normative ethics, that
yeah,
this is like, no, this is the way that we show our humanity towards other people, our gratitude and our so I think, and those do come into conflict sometimes. Um, there's also, by the way, been a lot of critique of that kind of three-part system of ethics, especially by feminist and decolonizing kinds of ethics. But I think this is a classic thing of this isn't just a math equation, right? This is about how you show care
right.
and love. So yeah.
Camille says, hold on, find it again. Wait a minute. Oh, here it is. She says Jesus performed a crazy miracle by raising Lazarus from the dead. There's no putting a price on that. He did it for free. Nothing Mary could ever do would show her gratitude sufficiently. The sisters were probably supported by their brother.
Mm-hmm.
Christ kept their family safe. uh,
Yeah.
um, and who could put a price on that? And given the fact that women can own property back then, he was probably the person who kept the family safe and
Mm-hmm.
and and fed. So yeah, what kind of price can you put on that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also a good point, Camille, pointing to the fact that for him, I mean, if you go back and you read that story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, it is a heartbreaking story. Even the whole idea, she said to him, I mean, I'm going back and thinking of the relationship, right? She said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, do you believe in the resurrection? And she says, yeah, I do, but he's gone now. You
Bring
know?
his hand.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I believe in the resurrection. That's great. But he'll be resurrected on the last day. There's a lot of days between now and then, right? And and then, Jesus weeps. He brings him out, and then of course, all that stuff. As far as I could be wrong, this may be the first time she's seen him
Sounds like it. Yeah.
since that miracle, right? And then it says, and of course, again, there's been some interesting writing on Mary and Martha and their relationship and whether that was actually just one woman that John has divided into two. But in this story, Martha's serving, and where's Mary? She's back at Jesus's feet, right? Jesus says, in another story, Jesus said, she's sitting at his feet. She's a disciple. And Martha says, make her come in here. And he says, she's chosen the better part. Now she's anointing his feet. I mean, there's just so many.
Yeah.
This is a long story. I mean, we're just getting a little piece of it today. So, yeah. Um, other thoughts or comments?
Camille says the nard was never going to be sold. It was purchased for burial needs.
Mm,
True. Judas is saying that prepping Jesus. Listen, Judas is saying that prepping Jesus' body after death is not sufficient.
mm,
And then Miriam says, perhaps without empathy, we might have all perished long ago. This
yeah,
is true.
right.
This is true.
Yeah. It's our ability to feel with other people that allows us to survive as a species, you know?
Let's go back to Camille's point for a second,
Mhm.
because the nard was for his burial. And he literally said, well, she's just doing it now.
Yeah.
It was never going to be sold.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, it had value. I mean, one other place it says it was worth, well, I can't remember how many days or years' wages it was worth, but it was worth a lot.
And let me ask you
So,
this in your research, like
yeah,
how much nard would it take to do one body though for the burial?
I don't know, like three-quarters of a pound is a lot. I don't know if that's in another place. The interesting thing, you could probably do a whole study of ointments and herbs in the New Testament, because when they go to I don't know if it's in John or another gospel when it says the women were going to anoint Jesus's body, the volume that they give for the amount of stuff they were carrying was like 2 tons of. I mean, it's ridiculous, right?
Wow.
Like, there's no way they were carrying that much, but I do think there's something symbolic going on there that people have made stabs at, but I'm not savvy enough to really know. But
Chris
yeah,
says, hold on, let's see. Got a couple more comments. Hold on, let me shrink this down so this will be bigger. Chris says, there's a weird dichotomy where so many people hold in their heads that greed is a positive, rational part of human nature,
hmm,
and also cannot understand that when they are in need of what others, when they are in need, oh, it moved again. Where, okay, and also cannot understand that when they are in need, that others are not falling over themselves to help.
right,
A weird helped me lift myself up by my bootstraps so I could continue my role as a rugged
yeah,
individualist.
hmm,
The entitled position so that so many of us hold is so counter to what is actually possible in community.
yeah,
That's a very good point.
yeah.
That was fun. I put up a meme a little while ago on Facebook. No, it wasn't a meme. It was this guy that was talking about um people who said, "Oh, what's the governor of Arkansas, Huckleberry,
Oh, Huckabee, yeah, yeah,
yeah, she's one of the main people. Like, well, we should cut down FEMA. We don't need no government assistance. Now that they have these tornadoes, now they need some government intervention.
right,
It's
right,
always when you need it that it seems to be important.
right. Well, and I do think that's part of the. I mean, there are several messages in the gospel, and we also have, like, I mean, Aesop's fables talk about this stuff, that everyone needs help, and you
Yeah,
should, part of the reason you want to give help is that you're going to need it eventually. I do think, I mean, just scientifically, this is one of the reasons that we survive as a species, is because we are willing to help each other. Not necessarily that we expect anything in return,
Yeah.
but that there is a reciprocity in that if we're all giving, then that there's a synergistic effect. More is going to get around. More is going to come back to all of us, right? Um, yeah, absolutely. Um,
Camille says necessary is not the right word. Judas is just proving that he doesn't care about the end of life
mm,
traditions. For him, it's all about the money.
yeah.
True.
Well, yeah. I mean, so there is a lot of yeah, I mean it would be pretty enigmatic, I think, even if you I mean, I know Jesus has said several times, I'm on my way to Jerusalem to die, but for you to be sitting at the table and saying, she's prepared me for burial, right? He's talking as though he's already a corpse, which, I mean, if someone says that, you'd be like, hmm, what are you saying? It just kind of goes by without comment in this story. But yeah, anyway, yeah. Oh, would you
Uh,
read Teresa's comment?
yeah. Teresa says right now I'm fresh off the protest. I'm I'm fresh off of the protest yesterday, and there are so many people saying, "What's the point? Things are still f that money, time, energy was wasted." And so I'm reading it in that context.
Yeah.
We need so many types of ways to show solidarity, and it all matters, especially when it adds up. People complaining that it wasn't perfect and not doing jack themselves, but
Hmm.
criticizing the actual efforts are not worth listening to. They are doing the work of the opponents.
Hmm.
I'm too busy to let the moral superiority from people doing nothing drag me down.
Oh, that is what a beautiful sentence.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
There is so much, yes, so much of it is letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Oh, well, you should have done this.
yeah.
Someone kind of armchair quarterbacking what you do, your devotion, your resistance, whatever that happens to be. Um, the world is full of armchair quarterbacks, right?
It is, and I told you, I texted you earlier because didn't think I was going. If you had more people, I probably wouldn't have got on. But I was writing a response to a discussion question, and it was talking about the differences between why the Obama administration was able to get the ACA approved when the Clinton administration wasn't. And
Hmm.
not I mean, it was a Herculean feat for a lot of reasons.
Hmm.
The Congress that Clinton and Obama had were both about the same. They were nowhere near the majorities that Lyndon Baines Johnson had or the Franklin Delano Roosevelt had when they
Hmm.
did all that stuff. Like they were at a deficit when it just came to support.
Yeah.
And and I talk about this, and sometimes people who are more progressive like frown on me for this, but like the smart thing that the Obama administration did was one, they created the framework for the ACA and let Congress shout it out and let them do all the details. Clinton and
Hmm.
them did everything. They had a whole fully
Right.
realized plan that no one had input in
Hmm.
and thought it was going to pass.
Right.
But in that, we always have to reference the spirit of cooperation, compromise,
Hmm.
and reconciliation.
Hmm.
And like right now, like nobody's doing that.
Hmm.
Everybody is my way or the highway.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like even when I think about, prior to the election, like a lot of us, well, a lot of y'all, because black people are tired, are out here protesting because so many people were like so tied
Hmm.
up in their camps that if you're not doing everything that I need you to do,
Right.
then I'm just not gonna vote.
Hmm.
And I try to tell people, black people we have never, to this day, still do not have that level of privilege to where
Hmm.
we vote for someone who has all of our issues in mind.
Right.
I might vote for a black politician who's concerned about my civil rights, but guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they don't give a crap about me being gay.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm always having to choose the
Yeah.
lesser of the evils. So when I look at our Hispanic siblings, our Muslims, people who are like the Palestine, yes, we're not perfect,
Hmm.
but don't let being perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah. Right.
Kamala Harris wouldn't have done any of this stuff, none of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But for some reason, people who call themselves, I'm talking about the ones who are actually movable. You know,
Yeah.
because some of us are down in our camp. I'm down in the Democrat camp, down for whatever, right? But
Yeah.
like the people who are movable were gullible to that and was like, oh, well, you know what? They're not good on all these issues, so I'm gonna go over here or do nothing.
Right.
That ain't how
Well,
this works.
there's definitely as you said, there's a privileged part to saying someone has to have ideological purity, and also to not listen to the people who are struggling for survival. Like listen to them and say, well, what would you have me do? Like what would be the let me follow your example, right? Um, absolutely. As you said, you've had to make these choices for a long
Always,
time, for
always,
generations. Right.
always.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like even when I'm looking at the mayor's race coming up, the people who announced, I mean, I don't have a lot of hope for any of them. You know, the ones that we know that are announced so far. But
Hmm.
like at the end of the day, like one of them actually put forth a black woman put forth a HIV criminalization bill back in 2015. You're a Democrat. That ain't what we do.
Hmm.
You know, I
Yeah.
can't vote for you. I
Yeah.
don't. I just can't.
Yeah.
You know, but that's something that's very egregious. But like, just not sharing your opinion on what's, and we all know what's going on in the Middle East is wrong. We all
Yeah.
know it's wrong. But because of the way that we're like tied up, it's just hard for people to say, okay, this is, well, it shouldn't be hard, but it is for people to say, hey, this is flat out wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Let me bring it back home to the story, I think. I do I mean I think one of the messages I get from this story, I'll share this like as a personal principle. And I won't say this is like hard and fast, 100% all the time. Um, but it's something that I've learned from in my own interactions with people is the person in front of you, the person that you're face to face with has priority over abstractions, people texting you. Okay, I'll break it real simple. Someone texting you does not have priority over the person that you're talking to. You know,
Right.
the person in front of you is the most important person.
Kind of like being at a restaurant in a drive-through.
Yes, yes. But the same thing being true with, the person in front of you is more important than abstractions, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, and part of this comes from my bias also, I think both as a pastor and as a mental health counselor. Um, when I'm dealing with someone, there may even be parts of what they're saying that I dislike or their ideology or whatever, but the fact is that's the image of God in front of me right now. So how do I treat it? Them, you know? Um, yeah.
Two comments, then you want to go close?
Yeah, yeah, probably so.
Teresa says, I think a lot of people overestimated their level of privilege this time, and that's is biting them now. They thought the leopards would not eat their faces.
That's very true.
That is very true. You can put that
Yes.
in the book. Camille says, I find it interesting that we are faced with a Judas grifter in the company
Mhm.
of the disciples. Sounds like they knew he was skimming off the top. These types have always been with us, just like we'll always have before.
Ooh, that's a good statement. You know what? I do think that's part of what the Gospels are after. And I mean, there's been a lot of speculation. I won't go into all the Judas research, but whether Judas was a real person or a stand-in for demonization of the
The
Jews.
devil.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the idea is, even in this, tight group of 12 people who thought they had each other's backs, that there was a betrayer. And I think that's part of the message. So anyway, well, yeah, let's go ahead and move toward closing. Thank you, Tony. I know you have schoolwork, so I really appreciate you being here today.
Sacrifices, sacrifices.
And thanks to all of you who tuned in today. If you have been watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you don't mind, just click like or comment with where you're watching from, so we have a way to count you today. We'd appreciate it. So yeah, if you'll do the closing prayer, Tony.
Gotcha. God of Shalom, bring peace among the nations, bring peace among the religions. Give us personal and corporate knowledge of the foundations of our faith, and the core of our being. Amen.
God is love. Nothing is wasted. all things shall be well. Go in peace. Amen. Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks for those of you who joined us online. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. If you're on Zoom, you can stick around for a minute